Hey everyone, welcome back to J is for Justice. My name is Jay. I am your host. If you are new here, please consider subscribing and liking this video as a free way to support your favorite creators. In today's video, we are going to start with part 1 of Nichole Schmidt, who is Gabby Petito's mother, with her deposition. I want to give special thanks to Incognito Potato for helping me out and being the lawyer. And we both decided to be off camera for this video just so nothing would come across silly or goofy, because in no way, shape, or form do we think that Nichole or Joe Petito's depositions should be funny in any way. So I hope you enjoy part 1. We will be following up with the rest. This is really long, so bear with us and enjoy the video.
Miss Schmidt, my name's Chuck Meltz, and I represent Steve Bertolino, who is currently a party in a lawsuit that's been brought by you and your former husband, Joe Petito. I'm here today to ask you questions about that.
Can I just correct you? We were never married.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Just for
No.
reasons of...
Totally understand. I'm here today to ask you questions related to that lawsuit. I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself, your background, the events that have brought us here today. If I ask you anything that you're not clear about or uncertain, it's not my intent.
Okay.
So if you hear something from me that you're just not quite sure what I'm looking for, let me know and I will retry to rephrase the question, hopefully in a more understandable way.
Okay.
Assuming you understand my questions, I need you to answer out loud using words. Now, if you shake your head or shrug your shoulders,
I gotcha.
I'll say, is that a yes or is that a no? And it's not to be impolite. It's just to make sure that we have an accurate record of what your responses are. Another way to have a good record is that only one of us speak at one time. So please do your best to be patient. Let me finish my questions before you start to answer. I'll do my best to let you finish your answers before I start my question. That way we're both not speaking over one another. And then finally, if you need a break for any reason, and the subject matter is such that we may need some breaks, or even if it's lunch, or the bathroom, or anything else, it's not meant to be an uncomfortable process. So I'll take breaks, somewhat regularly. But if you need one before me, let me know. We'll take a break. Pick right back up where we left off. All right?
Yes, sir.
Can you please state your full name?
Nichole, Nichole Schmidt, Schmidt.
Miss Schmidt, what's your date of birth?
78.
Where do you currently live?
Riverview, Florida.
What's your address?
That's in Riverview, 33579.
Who lives there with you?
My husband, James Schmidt.
Does he go by Jim?
Jim, yes.
And does anyone else live with you at that address?
Yes. My son, blank Schmidt, and my daughter, blank, and blank.
How old is blank?
He's 20.
What about M?
She's 14.
And C?
Is 10.
When did you and Jim get married?
We got married April 16th, 2020. We got married April 16th, 2005.
When did you come to Florida?
He came down in April of 2022, I came down in June. I don't remember the exact day. It was the end of June 2022.
And when we're talking about you coming down, that's when you relocated to Florida.
Yes.
Where were you living before relocating to Florida?
Blue Point, New York.
What was your address in Blue Point?
It was blank.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Do you want the zip code?
Sure.
11715.
From when to when did you live in Blue Point, New York?
2006 to 2022.
Are you currently employed?
I just got a job, actually.
What are you doing?
I am the donor engagement manager at the Spring of Tampa. It's a domestic violence agency.
When did you start there?
I am starting there in 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yes.
Is that a volunteer or paid position?
Paid.
Full time?
Yes.
When were you last employed?
I was working for Bayport Blue Point School District, and the last time I worked was September of 2021, the very beginning.
You were a teacher's aide?
Teaching assistant.
Teaching assistant.
Uh-huh.
And you worked with developmentally challenged students?
Yes.
How long did you do that?
7 years.
What's your highest level of completed education?
Associate's degree.
What did you get that in? Like general studies, or was it in
Graphic design.
graphic design?
Uh-huh.
What drew you to the job at the domestic violence agency?
Since we moved to the Tampa area, I've gotten to know a lot of the people and that work for the agency, and they did have a job opening, and I was very interested in being a part of that. So
What will your specific job be?
I will be working with fundraising and donors.
Does the center itself offer support and counseling?
Yes, they have a shelter and a school.
Is that something you have any interest in doing as well, or just more of the fundraising side?
I want to work in prevention, domestic violence prevention.
And you were kind enough to clear it up at the start of the deposition. But in the past, did you have a relationship with a gentleman by the name of Joe Petito?
Yes.
And his name's Joseph. But does he go by Joe?
He goes by Joe, yeah.
The two of you were never married?
No.
Did you live together for some period of time?
Not technically, but we would sleep at each other's homes and stuff.
What period of time did that occur?
Now you're taking me way back.
Yes.
Okay, so it must have been 1990 to late 1997. And we were together for a couple years. We had Gabby in 1999. And when Gabby was about 6 months old was when our relationship ended.
Gabby is what you call Gabrielle.
Yes.
Is it okay if I call her Gabby, or would you like me to refer to her?
You can call her Gabby, yeah.
And Gabby's last name was?
Petito.
Petito?
Uh-huh.
When you and Mr. Petito ended your relationship, where did Gabby live?
I was her custodial parent, but she would visit him on weekends.
Where were you and Mr. Petito living at the time?
I was still living at home with my parents, my mother, and my stepfather.
Where were you living then?
Patchogue, New York.
Can you spell that?
Patchogue.
I would not have guessed, so thank you. And where was Mr. Petito living?
Selden, Selden.
With respect to the living arrangements and the visitation schedules, was that just something that you and Mr. Petito worked out together, or did you have to get like an order or
We did it together, but we also did it through the courts. So we just wanted everything to be on paper.
what was or what is Gabby's date of birth?
Blank of 1999.
When you and Jim got married, did Jim adopt Gabby or did she?
No.
And then as Gabby grew up and started going to school, did you remain the primary residence, for lack of a better term, for her?
Yes.
Was that always the case?
No. Do you want me to offer more information?
I'll make it easy for you, just so Mr. Riley isn't like, don't volunteer information. Can you describe for me kind of how Gabby grew up and which parent she might be at what period of time?
She was with me 99% of the time. However, we lost our home in Superstorm Sandy. So we just decided that she would go to that school for a little while with her dad and go live with her dad because it was a little more stable than where we were staying. We were staying in a rental. And then she came back home. And during high school, I forget what grade it was. She did go live with her dad maybe for a period of 4 months or so, and then came back home again. She was just with both of us, I would say most of the time, but I was technically the custodial parent.
In terms of the shared parental arrangement, did that generally go fairly smoothly between you and Mr. Petito?
Yeah.
Did you all ever have to do like parent counseling or anything like that?
No.
Where did Gabby go to high school?
Bayport Blue Point High School.
Was she living with you and Jim at that time?
Uh-huh.
Yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. There'll be more of those. Did Gabby graduate?
Yes.
When did she graduate?
2017.
So following Gabby's high school graduation, what did she do next?
She moved to North Carolina.
Why did she do that as far as you understood?
She couldn't wait to travel, but she met friends that were moving down there and decided to go down there.
Was it a particular group of friends or like
Yeah.
a boyfriend?
Yeah, I think she was dating one of them, but then when she got to North Carolina, they didn't stay together. It was more of I think she just wanted to get out of New York and go to North Carolina.
So was this still in 2017 or are we into 2018 now?
2017 into 2018, she was there, yeah.
Where did Gabby go next after spending some time in North Carolina?
She came back home.
Back to Blue Point?
Yes.
And then was she home for a period of time before moving down to somewhere else?
Yes, but now, please, I don't remember all the exact dates, but when she came back home after a little while is when she started to hang out with Brian and then moved to Florida after that.
So are we 2018, 19 maybe around this time?
Yeah.
I would assume Gabby had a number of friends that you would become aware of. At some point in time, did you become aware that she had a friend who was Brian Laundrie? And in particular, that he might be more than just a casual friend?
Yes.
And how did you become aware of that?
He started coming over to the house, and I remembered him because she would talk about him in high school. They were friends. They were in the same friend group, and I thought it was nice.
As far as you understood it, Gabby and Brian started dating while Gabby was still in Blue Point.
So when they went on their first road trip together, again, I can't remember the dates, but it was that summer. I guess it had to be 2019. I could be off. But they went on a first road trip, and that's when they came back, and I knew they were dating at that point. She tried to play it off as they were friends, but
What kind of road trip are you talking about?
They went in her small Nissan car all the way to California, up to Portland, Oregon, and back. They stayed in Airbnbs along the way.
You had mentioned a few minutes ago that when Gabby graduated, she was excited about leaving New York and going to North Carolina. You're talking about this trip to California where she drove there and back. Was there something that Gabby liked to do?
Yes.
I take it Gabby had a cell phone.
Yes.
Was that part of your account or Jim's account? Or did she have her own cell account?
It was. I'm trying to think before it switched over. I think it was ours. at the time.
Did that switch at some point?
Yes. It was under her grandfather's after a certain amount of time to save money. It was cheaper. Stanley.
Stanley's her grandfather's name?
Yeah, my stepdad.
And what's his last name?
Houlik. Houlik.
Do you recall what type of phone Gabby had? And by that I mean, was it an Apple iPhone?
It was an iPhone. It might have been an 11 at the time.
Do you remember who she had service with under Stanley's plan?
Yes, it was Sprint/T-Mobile because they turned over to T-Mobile.
Did Gabby have her own Apple account? Or did she share that with any family member?
Like an Apple iCloud account?
Like your Apple ID?
Yes, she had her own.
She had her own? And did you and Gabby have like a share your friends, share your location feature between your two phones?
Location, not all the time. It wasn't on all the time, but yeah, I asked her to put it on.
So when she started traveling, not that you would do it all the time, but when she started traveling, would you have the ability from time to time to kind of pull up on your phone where it's find my friends or find my iPhone and see generally where she was?
Yes.
Did your ability to do that ever change? Did she ever disable that or switch that or anything else?
I don't remember.
When Gabby would travel, and this is when she's sort of just meeting Brian, did you have like a routine with her when she was gone? Would you check in with her or she would check in with you? Text, call?
She was good about texting me constantly or calling, FaceTiming, all of it, and sending lots of photos.
Okay. Maybe if you didn't get a call, you might get a photo.
Correct.
Was it sort of an everyday type thing? Would you generally try to touch base with Gabby once a day?
Yes.
And then I take it, Gabby sometimes may travel to locations that didn't have great cell service, whether it was more remote or a national park or something like that. Would that be fair?
Probably.
Okay. If she was doing that, would she kind of let you know in advance? Hey, I might not be able to text you or call you for a day or two, or
I don't remember.
you mentioned having Brian at the house. Was there ever a period of time that Brian lived with you and Jim?
No, he might have stayed over a couple of times, but he didn't live there.
At some point after you became aware or suspected that Brian and Gabby were dating, even if she said that they were just friends, did you ever meet Brian's parents?
Not right away, no.
Did there ever come a time where you met Brian's parents?
Yes.
And when was that? When do you think you met them for the first time?
It was before they were moving to Florida. They came over and were picking up some things for Gabby. And we spoke in the driveway. I think it was they wanted to stay at a distance because of COVID. She was very leery of COVID. So we just kind of talked in the driveway, and that was that.
Who was moving to Florida?
Roberta and Chris.
Okay. So sometime when the COVID pandemic was chugging along.
Like at the end, it was towards the end. I don't know really when it was, to be honest. COVID was when? 2019 or 2020?
Like March of 20 for some period of time there.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why. It was during the COVID pandemic. Yeah.
Was Gabby also moving to Florida?
Gabby had already went down when I met them.
Was Gabby home when you met the Laundrie parents?
No.
Gabby had already moved to Florida?
Yes, with Brian.
With Brian?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember when she did that?
I don't recall the dates, no.
Was it pre-COVID?
Yes, I believe so.
Where did Gabby and Brian move to when they came to Florida, if you know?
I think it was Blank in Northport was the first place.
Was that a house that the Laundries owned?
Correct.
And this is my fault for kind of jumping ahead the way I did, but
That's okay.
at some point in time, did Gabby have a discussion with you, or you and Jim, where she said, I think I'm going to move to Florida with Brian?
Yes.
Did Gabby have a plan on what she was going to do when she got to Florida? Or was it just a new place for her to go?
She wanted to move here and get a job and try it out.
How long had Gabby and Brian been dating at that point?
I don't remember. It was probably a few months.
In terms of geography, and again, this is just me not knowing New York, maybe as well as I should. But did you know where Brian's parents lived? And if so, how far was that from Blue Point?
I believed up in New York when they lived up in New York.
Yes.
I believed it was about 10 minutes from me where they lived. I don't remember the exact town. I want to say no, I don't know. I'm not sure. But it was about 10 minutes away.
When Brian's parents came by and everyone's keeping their social distance in the driveway.
Uh-huh.
Had Brian's parents already moved to Florida? Do you know? Or were they still living in New York?
I think they were still living in New York at the time.
Was their coming over to your house planned?
Yes.
And in terms of the items that they were picking up for Gabby, were those sort of all ready to go so it was easy for them to load up?
Yes.
Did they have to even come in the house?
They did not want to come in the house. That's why we spoke in the driveway.
Got it. Was it just general, hey, how are you? Or was there...
We spoke a lot about Brian and Gabby being together.
What do you recall about any of those conversations?
I remember her talking about how happy Brian was and how she felt they were good for each other. Just general, like relationship, he seems happy.
And that would be Miss Laundrie.
Yes.
Is her name Roberta?
Yes.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. Laundrie?
A little bit.
Chris?
Oh, sorry. A little bit. He kind of stood in the background and was chit-chatting a little bit with us. My husband came out as well. All four of us were talking.
How long a conversation do you think that was?
I would say about 20 minutes or so.
After that conversation, did you ever see the Laundries again in person?
No, I don't think so.
At least not before Gabby passed, right?
No.
Correct?
Correct.
Sorry. That sometimes when we do double negatives,
I got you.
So then I follow up. Did you have, when Gabby was leaving to go to Florida, or even at this time where she had already left, and we're having this kind of moving conversation in the driveway of where you and Jim live, did you have the phone numbers of Chris and Roberta Laundrie?
I believe I had Roberta's at the time, or had. I don't remember when I got Roberta's, but I know I had it once Gabby moved. I just don't remember when.
Prior to the events of like August and September of 2021, had you ever called Chris or Roberta for any reason?
No. I believe there was some communications on Facebook. What's the other one? Pinterest? We shared a Pinterest board because we were looking at wedding stuff because, Gabby and Brian got engaged at some point. So we were just friendly that way, but not on the phone or anything. Conversations.
Got it. When did Gabby and Brian get engaged?
Oh, man, that I do not remember. Sorry. My brain is just...
No worries. Did Gabby have an engagement ring?
No, actually, because I remember saying, oh, you don't have a ring? Yes. So no, she did not have an engagement ring.
And then either before or when you found out that Gabby and Brian were engaged, lack of a ring notwithstanding, how did you feel about that?
I thought it was a little bit soon. I was like, are you sure? I remember saying, are you sure? You haven't really lived there that long. Are you sure? Yeah.
I take it Gabby's response was she was sure at least then.
At the time, yes.
Yeah.
She was sure.
Was there any type of engagement party at all?
No, but she did want to plan one.
And kind of what time frame are we talking about now?
I know it was during COVID. I don't know the specific time frame, but we really couldn't do anything because of COVID. I remember I couldn't fly down, and I was supposed to come visit in 2020 at some point.
When you found out that they were getting engaged, did you have any either direct conversations with Brian's parents or maybe like a group call or Facebook or FaceTime or anything like that?
No.
Did you ever come to visit Gabby and Brian when they were living in Florida?
No, because of COVID.
At this point in Gabby's life, where she's out of high school and she's in a relationship with Brian, did you have much interaction with Joe or Mr. Petito about Gabby for any particular reason? Do the two of you check in regularly with one another? Or since she's now out of high school, is it more each have your own families?
It's like if she needed something important was going on, we would talk about it because we were still co-parenting, even though she was an adult at the time. So yeah, we kept in touch.
Did you talk about Gabby getting engaged to Brian with Joe?
Probably, but I don't honestly remember.
Okay. Prior to the kind of late summer of 2021, did you and Joe ever have a conversation that sticks out in your mind about Brian? Either you called because there was something you wanted to say about Brian, or Joe called you for that reason?
I don't remember.
Were there any major co-parenting decisions that you and Joe had to make after high school? Was there like, hey, we'd like to kind of pay for school or start a career or buy a house?
He had bought her a car. I was insuring it. We had to make her sell her car because she got in 3 accidents. So I said I would no longer insure her. And then that was that. That was probably the big decision that we made. We didn't like that she was moving out of state, of course. That was another decision we talked about. But it was her decision, and she was an adult. So.
Did you tell Gabby you weren't thrilled about her moving out of state?
I did and I didn't. I was like, I don't like it as your mom, but if you feel like you're doing the right thing, go with your gut.
You mentioned a little bit ago about Facebook.
Uh-huh.
When you were talking about kind of interacting on Facebook, do you remember what kind of group? Huh? Who do you remember kind of in this group having Facebook accounts? Did you have your own Facebook account?
Yes.
Did Jim have his own Facebook account?
Yes.
Did Gabby have her own Facebook account?
She did, but she didn't really use it very much. She said it was for old people.
Did Brian or Brian's parents have their own Facebook accounts?
I don't think Christopher did. I don't know. But I was friends with Roberta on Facebook.
Did Gabby, instead of Facebook, have her own social media account? And if so, did you follow it? Like Instagram?
Instagram, yes.
Did you have your own Instagram account?
Yes.
Did you mainly have your own Instagram account so you could follow Gabby's Instagram account?
I just had one, but yeah, that's the best way to see her photos and such too. And she would post things before sending them to me. So
Would Gabby ever reach out to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about posting this on Instagram? Do you like this one or that one?
yes, actually, I was her editor.
That was just a good guess on my part.
Uh huh.
And then what types of things, particularly like this post high school? Gabby's moved to Florida. What types of things is she interested in? She posted on Instagram at that time.
Well, she's an artist. She loved art. She had some beautiful pictures of herself in nice places she's traveled to. A lot of selfies. But yeah, just art and travel, I would say, were her main two interests.
At some point in time, did Gabby and you have a conversation about whether those interests, art and travel, could somehow turn into a profession or career?
Yeah, we probably had conversations about that.
Did Gabby ever come up with kind of like a plan? Or, hey, this is what I think I'd like to do or try to do, foster my love of art and travel?
I think it evolved. Once she was in Florida, she was like, I want to get a van and I want to travel. And we talked about tattooing. She actually got a tattoo then. And just a plan to kind of travel and blog so she could maybe make a career out of it.
Did you help her get the van?
I did not know.
Did Joe?
I don't think so.
Okay. Did Gabby ever actually work for some time in Florida?
Yes.
What was she doing?
Her first job was at Taco Bell, and then she got a job at Publix as a pharmacy tech.
Was Brian working in Florida, as far as you know?
I believe he was working at Publix. I don't know if he was a manager or not. I just know he was working at Publix.
And then once Gabby and Brian had been living in Florida for some period of time, did you get a sense of how that was going? Did you talk about that with Gabby?
It seemed pretty typical. They had arguments. She would call me, be mad at Brian or vice versa. Brian's mad at me, but it was just your typical 20-something-year-old drama. Nothing out of the ordinary.
While they were living in Florida, was there ever any incident that you were aware of that escalated to the point that the police had to be called or someone had to go to the hospital or anything like that?
No.
When you would have a conversation with Gabby about, someone might be mad at the other person for that period of time, was it over fairly normal stuff? Or did anything stand out in your mind as, gosh, that seems a little problematic?
I didn't look at it that way at the time. It seemed pretty normal.
Do you know if Brian helped buy the van?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, the van gets bought.
Uh-huh.
Yes?
Yes.
And the plan for Gabby was to travel in the van and record and post her travels.
With Brian.
With Brian?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Did Gabby have like an itinerary or a schedule she had laid out in terms of, here's where we're going to go first, second, 3rd.
Yes, she was very much a planner with that trip.
And did trips in the van? The one.
I don't know if they used it before the big trip, but as far as I know, it was just the one.
Did you know about the big trip before Gabby and Brian started on it?
Yes, uh-huh.
I take it because Gabby shared information about the big trip with you.
Yes.
What information about the big trip did Gabby share?
That it would take a couple of months and that she wanted to camp at all the national parks out west and that she would be videoing and trying to start a YouTube channel.
At that time, was Gabby's primary social media still Instagram?
I would say so, yes.
Did she start her own YouTube channel?
Yes.
Did you start to follow Gabby's YouTube travel or channel?
Yes, of course.
And was the big trip supposed to take a couple of months, or was it somewhat flexible?
I think it was going to be approximately 3 months.
Did you generally have an understanding of where Gabby was going from place to place, or was there at least expected to be a certain point of time?
I had a general idea.
And Gabby was planning to leave on the big trip. Did you and Gabby have any type of plan about, hey, we'll kind of check in every morning? Or was it just more, when you have time, give me a call. Let me know you're okay?
It was pretty regular. I asked her to keep in touch because I was concerned that she was going to be on a road trip with just Brian and her. Yeah. I was just a concerned parent. I knew it would be fun and the trip of a lifetime, so I didn't want to deter her from going, but
Was Gabby an inexperienced camper at that time?
I wouldn't say experienced, but she was with Brian, who seemed to be a lot more experienced.
Why do you say that?
After, just hanging out with him and talking to him, he knew a lot about camping. He seemed to go on a lot of hiking trips and such.
When you would go on either the Instagram account or when the YouTube channel first started, would you either post comments or indicate somehow that you were on the site?
I probably did post comments. I don't remember specifically.
Do you know if Joe similarly followed Gabby's social media accounts at that time?
I'm sure he did, yeah.
Did you and Joe have any conversations about Gabby going on the trip?
I don't remember specifically. We may have. I just don't remember.
Do you actually remember the big trip starting? Like this is the day that she's leaving and it sticks out in your mind.
Yes. It was in June of 2021, and I only know that I was excited because she was stopping at her godmother's house in Charleston, South Carolina, which is my best friend.
Who is that?
Flora, Flora, Rocco, Rocco. And I believe they stayed there for a night or two before leaving and stopped a couple places before heading to New York. Yeah.
Did they meet up with Joe in New York?
I believe they were there for a couple weeks in New York, so I'm sure they saw her dad.
Where does Joe live now?
He lives in Vero Beach, Florida.
Do you remember when he moved from New York?
I believe it was maybe May of 2021.
We talked a little bit earlier about you and Joe staying in touch as co-parents even after Gabby graduated high school. Would you actually see Joe in person during this time as well? Or would it just be phone calls or text?
Mostly texts, I would say. Some phone calls.
When Gabby and Brian started on the big trip, when do you think they may have last seen Joe Petito in person?
I don't remember.
Would it have been sometime?
Possibly, yeah.
Were you both at Gabby's high school graduation?
Yes.
Do you believe you had seen Joe Petito since Gabby's high school graduation when we're getting into June of 2021?
I think I may have. I just don't remember specifically.
Would that have been for any reason or event or...
I just don't remember.
Joe had got married at some point in time, correct?
Yes.
Yes? Was that to Tara?
Yes.
Would you and Jim ever socialize with Joe and Tara?
I'm trying to think if we did. I don't think we actually physically did, but we were always inviting each other to two things. If we were having a birthday party or something, if it was for Gabby, even we would say, "Do you guys want to do it together?" It just never worked out that we did it together, but yeah.
I got it. You would
We tried.
You would extend the invitation.
Yes.
But it never actually all came together.
Yes, yes. And the same from their side as well.
All right. When Brian and Gabby leave to go on a big trip, particularly at the beginning of it, with what degree of regularity were you either getting a direct outreach to her from Gabby, or you were seeing something posted on Instagram or YouTube?
I would say a couple times a day.
And then did she actually go see Flora in South Carolina?
Yes.
To your knowledge, did she get to New York?
Yes.
At some point in time, did the trip then head out west?
Yes.
Do you remember about when that was?
It was the end of June. It was after her brother's graduation. They were here for a few more days. I don't know the specific date, but they left the end of June.
Where were they going? Where were they going first out west?
I believe they were making stops on the way. I think they might have camped in like a Midwestern state and then headed down to Colorado, if I'm remembering correctly.
You're doing great. And was there some like big destination? Like, hey, we may make some stops along the way. And what we're really looking to do is get here.
I would say Yellowstone was probably like that last big stop.
In your conversations with Gabby, and were these phone calls, texts, or a combination?
Both.
Mostly texts? Mostly phone calls?
Mostly texts.
In your communications with Gabby by phone or by text, particularly as the Westward trek started, what was your sense from interacting with Gabby as to how things were going?
She was excited and happy and having a great time.
How long had the road trip been going at this point?
Oh, I don't. It was probably, let's see, June, maybe a month into it, July.
As the trip progressed west, do you still have that same level of hearing from Gabby, maybe twice a day? And things seem to be going good?
Yes, for the most part.
For the most part, meaning what?
For the most part, she mostly kept in touch.
Okay.
But when I was camping, I actually lost service and she was trying to get in touch with me and couldn't. So once I got service, she was like, "Why isn't anyone calling me?" So yeah, she was always trying to get me.
Was there ever a day, kind of prior to August of 2021, was there ever a day in this road trip where you just couldn't get in touch with Gabby?
It was that end of August. It was probably around the 28th, 29th.
Okay. But and that's when you know, there was this extended period of not being able to get in touch. But before then, were there ever did you ever go a day where you didn't hear from her?
I don't think so. Thank you guys for listening to part 1 of Nichole Schmidt's deposition. in the lawsuit against the Laundries. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists for more true crime content. And if that's not enough, you can join our Patreon. Don't have a tinfoil hat? It's okay. We'll make you one. It's that easy. See you guys in the next video.
See you later. Bye.